And a welcome here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. We are inside the Great Lakes Honda City studios. Great Lakes Honda City coming to you on 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard in Liverpool, New York. They are open for sales and service Monday through Saturday. They have end of the year deals. Don't miss out on these deals before the end of 2025. You can get a sneak peek by going to GreatLakesHondaCity.com. We are up and down the East Coast, the Midwest, the West Coast, and all around the globe on YouTube.com and Facebook.com, both /WakeUpCallDT, and on WakeUpCallDT.podbean.com. So we appreciate you being with us wherever you are. Once the shows go live, they jump into the archives on Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts, Player FM, Podbean, Podchaser.com, Podvine, Spotify, TuneIn, and YouTube. All you have to do is search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, or one word, Wake Up Call DT. With that being said, you saw the gentlemen that are here with me today of HerbFM Sports Radio and Sports TV, we should say, because you could see their faces weekly. We have Chris Heidel and Adam Lemerise here with us, and so happy to have the gentlemen here from the wonderful HerbFM Sports Radio to talk college football. We have a bunch of things to discuss as far as the coaching hires that we have seen and how the American has been poached again. We'll also get into the ACC and how Duke got, I don't know what type of lamp they rubbed in some cave of wonders, but they are in the ACC championship game. We'll discuss that and how many teams will get in to the college football playoff. We'll run some scenarios. We'll also get the gentleman's thought on Notre Dame. Should Notre Dame be in this thing? And if so, then over who? So with that being said, Chris, Adam, welcome to the broadcast.
Well,
thank you.
Thanks, Dan, for having us on the program.
Of course. So I'm going to bring up a little graphic here, gentlemen, and that graphic is going to show us not one, not two, not three, but four coaches coming from the American Conference, the former AAC or American Athletic. They are simply the American. And inside of the American Conference, a conference I've covered since before they had a name and a logo. Eric Morris is leaving North Texas for Oklahoma State. Jon Sumrall is leaving Tulane for Florida. Ryan Silverfield is leaving Memphis for Arkansas. And Alex Golesh is leaving South Florida for Auburn. Eric Morris came to the American when North Texas came to the American. He was hired as they were joining the conference from Conference USA. He brought them from 5-7 to 6-6, and then to 11-1, and to their first ever American championship game. Jon Sumrall spent 2 seasons with the Tulane Green Wave, and after Willie Fritz finished things up there and brought the team from the basement into success, the question was, can it continue? Jon Sumrall responded by going to back-to-back American championship games with an opportunity to win and potentially get in the college football playoff like Eric Morris and North Texas. In the case of Ryan Silverfield, it took a little more time, as Ryan Silverfield came into Memphis as their head coach after Mike Norvell, and before Norvell, Justin Fuente. Justin Fuente had a ton of success and built a special program, which Mike Norvell continued for 4 years. And then Ryan Silverfield took over. It took some time. Memphis dipped, and they found their way back up. They defeated Arkansas, and I guess the reality for Arkansas is if you can't beat him, hire him. And then in the case of South Florida, we know that Alex Golesh came to a program that was used to losing, used to being under 500, spent multiple seasons below 500, was in the rivalry game with UCF, and it wasn't even a rivalry game anymore because UCF was fighting to win the American and South Florida was fighting just to get to a bowl game. Then he comes in, and in 3 seasons, Alex Golesh takes South Florida to a winning record and a bowl appearance in all 3 seasons. So, gentlemen, I ask you, and I'll start with you, Chris, Eric Morris, Jon Sumrall, Ryan Silverfield, Alex Golesh, seems like the American has a lot of talent, or else why did the Big 12 and 3 SEC schools come after their coaches?
Well, I think after, let's say, the guy from Memphis, they beat Arkansas, so I guess Arkansas was looking for a coach. So, like you said, they beat Arkansas this year, so how would you get the coach to come to your school? You might have, probably knows how to, already beat them. The one down in South Florida, I think he should have stayed, because I feel like going to Auburn is really hard, because in the SEC, they want, SEC titles. They want to be, in the SEC championship game. And I thought Hugh Freeze was going to do it, but I guess Hugh Freeze, he ran out of luck after leaving Liberty and what he was in Mississippi State, right?
Yeah, he was. Well, Liberty was where they hired him out of, but
right.
I mean, he had a ton of success there. He beat Syracuse. They beat 2 ACC schools in 1 year, almost beat 3. I mean, they had a crazy amount of success, but it's funny how at the end of it all, here he goes to walk into his office and Auburn goes, "Freeze!" And then they send him packing. So, but go ahead with your thoughts.
That's pretty funny. And then what else? Who else? We got the guy from Tulane going to Florida. That's going to be a difficult thing, because Florida is known for, just like Tallahassee, they want SEC titles. They want to go into college football playoff games. They want to be, they have a tougher schedule this year. And I think Florida, didn't realize that the SEC is getting tough now with Texas and Oklahoma and LSU and all that stuff. So hopefully Summerfield could actually, the guy for Tulane, hopefully he could, Sumrall could actually do a good job and get that program back to where it was. Because I feel like they've been trying to, Adam and I talk about this all the time, they're trying to find a replacement for Urban Meyer. And before that was Steve Spurrier.
Yeah.
So it's been really tough to try to find a replacement for those two great coaches that brought, really high remarks to Florida. Yeah. So did I leave somebody else out?
So Alex Golesh of Auburn, Ryan Silverfield of Arkansas. Your thoughts on those two guys?
Actually,
you said Silverfield, so Eric Morris of Oklahoma State now.
Well, Eric Morris taking over for Gundy. Gundy was there for a very long time, so it's probably a new breed, new message. Like a lot of coaches, like we have in the NFL. We have here in Baltimore with John Harbaugh, been here for 15 years. I feel like coaches need to reinvent themselves, and if you keep saying the same thing over and over again, it's going to get sour. So now Oklahoma State will probably be better next year, because it's a new voice, a new way of doing things, and hopefully we'll see them do really well in the Big 12.
Yeah, so I mean, getting your thoughts from it, Adam, yours, as we look at the fact that the American poached yet again, we have become used to the Big 10, the Big 12, the ACC, and the SEC, the quote-unquote power conferences. The autonomy group is what I call them, because that's a legal term. It's a legislative term. Power was given by the media to essentially say, in essence, none of the other conferences matter, which I don't think is fair. So these quote-unquote power, in order to become more powerful, they're stealing from the non-power. So I don't know if you've ever tried this, Adam, before, but how can you steal power from a battery that doesn't work? So the American essentially is the generator for these coaches to have these opportunities. So when we see the SEC and the Big 12 plug into this generator and hope to gain power off the American, what are your thoughts on Eric Morris to Oklahoma State, Alex Golesh to Auburn, Jon Sumrall to Florida, and Ryan Silverfield to Arkansas?
Well, I'll start with Alex Golesh going to Auburn. I think this is a great move. He had, like you mentioned, Dan, he had success in Tampa at South Florida, and now he brings that success to the Plains in Auburn. And if you know Auburn, those fans are absolutely diehard and crazy, and they want someone to take them to the promised land. And Alex Golesh, in my opinion, is the perfect hire. Jon Sumrall going to Florida, I also like this move. You mentioned how successful he was at Tulane. That's key. He wants to carry that over to Gainesville. Like Chris talked about, it's hard to replace legends like Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer. They've tried. Well, I think this move is perfect. I love it. And Eric Morris going to Oklahoma State. another A-plus move. He comes from a program that not a lot of people really knew nothing about until this season. So he gets to go to the Big 12, where basically the top teams in the Big 12 are BYU, Texas Tech, Utah, and Arizona State. And he wants to take the Cowboys back to where those fans know from back in the day. And Ryan Silverfield going to Arkansas, I love it. Bobby Petrino did okay as an interim coach, but they needed someone that could carry them to the next level. And Ryan Silverfield, I think, can do it. I know it's hard to coach in the SEC, but, coming from the American Conference, it's an A-plus hire. So I love all the moves, taking these coaches from the American and giving the respect to the American Conference, because it doesn't get the respect like a lot of other conferences do. So maybe this will be a wake-up call for the nation. Say, hey, the American Conference has really good football programs, and start to put a lot more respect on it.
Yeah, no, and I think points very well taken and very well assembled there with that, Adam. And so, as we look at, and by the way, thank you for the shameless plug of saying wake up call. But when we look at you talk about respect, right? So let's go to another conference that doesn't really get that. And it comes with us hearing narratives. Narratives don't have to have any truth to them. It's just creating a perception and then trying to peddle that perception into reality. Now, when you look at the ACC, no, your typical players are not at the top, your Clemsons and your Florida States, but I'm going to take something that Jon Swafford said to me many years ago, and he was right. He said back in the day, the Coastal Division, it was the best. And people would say, man, it's not fair to have the Coastal and the Atlantic because the Coastal's where all the good teams are at. Then it shifted to the Atlantic. It shifted to Florida State and Clemson. You know what Jon Swafford told me a few years before he retired? He said, Dan, it's going to shift back. And when it shifts back, everybody's going to say, oh, well, now these teams shouldn't be in the Coastal. The Coastal's too hard. Now the Atlantic doesn't. He told me it would shift back. And who's playing for the championship? Virginia and Duke. And they're from the Coastal Division. And Pitt, who was almost there, they're from the Coastal Division. And Georgia Tech, who was almost there, they're from the Coastal Division. And Miami, who was almost there, they're from the Coastal Division. So shout out to Jon Swafford if you can hear me, sir, because you were 100% correct. So, Chris, I'll start with you on this. The ACC, they don't have two good teams like the Big Ten. They don't have two good teams like the Big 12. They have 5 teams that were fighting for second, and one team that outright had first, and a team out just outside of that in Louisville that's pretty good, and a team just outside of that in Wake Forest that's pretty good. So I ask you the question, do you buy into the narrative that the ACC is down because they don't have Clemson and Florida State at the top? Or do you buy into the reality that this is a new ACC that is deeper and can be more impactful in the fact that they have multiple teams that can play for a championship?
I think it's a great conference because right now everybody's going bowling. Even if you look at it, I heard stories today that a 5-7 Florida State team might go bowling. I'm like, oh, please God, no. But looking at the schedule, look at the ACC schedule. Okay, the standings. You got SMU is 8-4 overall. They're going bowling.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech is going bowling. California, who just fired Wilcox, they're going bowling. Clemson's going bowling. NC State's going bowling. Louisville's going bowling, and Wake Forest. So the only teams are not going are Florida State, North Carolina, Stanford, Virginia Tech, Boston College, and sorry, Dan, Syracuse.
Well, and the thing, so that's 11 out of 17.
Yeah, that's great. And if you look at the other conferences, let's pick the Big 12. Okay, the Big 12 has Texas Tech, BYU, Utah, Houston, Arizona State, Iowa State, Kansas State's going, TCU's going, and Cincinnati. That's the same. That's almost similar to what we have in the ACC.
Yeah, so they have 10 out of 16.
Yeah.
What about the Big Ten? Why don't you go to the Big Ten? See how many are going out of the 18 schools there.
Yeah, let's do this. Okay, we got Indiana and Ohio State, Oregon, Southern Cal, Michigan, Iowa, Washington, Illinois, Minnesota, Nebraska, Northwestern, and then you got Penn State, who basically is going bowling, even if they have a losing record in the ACC, in the Big Ten. Yeah. They're going bowling. And then everybody else is basically 5.
So they got 12. They got 12 of 18. 6 are out. So you got 6 out in the ACC, 6 out in the Big Ten, and you look at some of these schools that are going bowling. You look at Penn State, that was 3 and 6 in the conference. You look at Northwestern, that was 4 and 5 in the conference. Nebraska was 4 and 5 in the conference. Minnesota was 5 and 4. Illinois was 5 and 4. Washington was 5 and 4. Iowa is 6 and 3. And at the end of it all, Michigan should not be ranked. I don't know how the hell that happened. Nor should USC be ranked. But I guess you rank them maybe 24, 22, 25 because they beat Michigan. But really, you have a top-heavy Big Ten with 3 schools. And I would argue on the other side that if SMU had played in this championship, you got SMU, Virginia, and Miami that all have a potential place in the college football playoff. So, I mean, I guess I don't understand the narrative that the ACC is down, the ACC is trash. And also keep in mind, Alabama has 2 losses, one of them to a really bad Florida State team. So, I mean, and by the way, to whoever went on X, apparently I'm like James Gunn now. People go years back on my posts on Twitter, X, and they found that I said something positive about Mike Norvell in 2023. And they were like, you lied to us, Dan. I was like, bro, that was 2 years ago. Like, just because you're mad that they didn't fire Mike Norvell, they're right. Why are you write to the athletic director? Why are you writing to me? They're like, you lied to us. You said that you lied about recruiting. You lied about this. I said, hey, 2 years ago, you're a college football playoff team, and the committee made a dangerous precedent. So 2 years ago, you're in the CFP when there's 4 teams. Why are you telling me I was wrong? Well, you lied to us about Mike. I didn't lie to you about Mike. Jordan Travis getting injured is what screwed them over. So, yes. Adam, let me go to you for this, my guy. What do you think about the ACC and about where they stand? Are they weak? Are they top-heavy? Or is this a better ACC? Do you like covering an ACC that has 6 or 7 teams trying to get in to 2 spots, or do you just like a top-heavy like the Big Ten?
Oh, I like the ACC the way it is. You know, out of all of the years that I have been watching the ACC, this has been the craziest year I've ever seen it. People say they want the divisions. People say they want the divisions back. I like it the way it is. You know, it's nice to see like 8 or 9 teams have a shot to go to a bowl game this year. And you mentioned Wake Forest a lot. People are not giving Wake Forest a lot of respect. They have a first year head coach in Jake Dickert, who came over from Washington State, and people are like, okay, what's Wake Forest going to do? Wake Forest has a shot to win 9 games in Jay Dickert's first year if they win their bowl game. Yeah. And that is saying something that a lot of people probably did not expect going into the season. So the ACC this year, their non-conference schedule was good and they didn't capitalize on it. But overall, the ACC is still a really good conference really good players, really good coaches, and it's nice to see, the way SMU is, coming over from the American. They've only lost 2 conference games, and that's hard to do. So I have a lot of respect for the ACC, and people have said it's a crazy conference. Well, yeah, we didn't know what to expect going into last weekend. So I'm happy with the way the ACC is right now.
Yeah, Chris, you got any final thoughts before we play some scenarios with the ACC?
Well, like I said, it's fascinating. Everybody thinks the ACC is trash, but I feel like it's the best conference because we got 17 schools. We got the teams from California and SMU, but those teams were competitive this year. Yes, I know Stanford was 4-8, but they beat a really bad Florida State team that I stayed up till 2:00 in the morning to watch that thing, and And Frank Wright did a great job this year. Yes, Frank Wright's not going to be the coach next year because he's only did a 1 year and one and done. But yeah. I think he got the program in the right direction. Yes, they got another 4-8 season, but I think Andrew Luck will be happy about it. And then you got California. Yes, they fired Wilcox, but I think Ron Rivera had something to do with that. But I guess Ron probably wants somebody. Riverboat Ron probably looking for somebody to take over that program, but. Wilcox was there from that transition from the Pac-12 to the ACC, and he did a fantastic job this year. Last year they lost on the road a lot, by 1 point, 2 points, 3 points there. Yeah. And then you got SMU, and the coach down there, he's doing a great job putting college football in Dallas because now that's like if you say Dallas, you say SMU. You don't say the Cowboys, because the Cowboys haven't been relevant since 1995. So. SMU is now the school and the brand in Dallas right now.
Yeah, and they embraced it. I was talking to SMU throughout the process when they first, within those first few months of them talking about Dallas and putting Dallas out there on everything and wanting to just embrace the D because it used to just be the Mustang. And I love that they did it because, shamelessly, if I wear anything, it looks like Dan and it's got a Mustang on it. But, seeing what SMU has done, they've lost 2 games in 2 years in the regular season in the ACC. They were just outside the door of an ACC championship game this year. They played in one in their first year. And there's a lot to be said about who SMU is. I want to talk about that which doesn't make any sense. I read these off when we had DT and Murphy and Brendan was on the show earlier this week. I read off the tiebreakers. If 2 teams are tied, then what? If it's more than 2 teams, then what? If it's 3 or more. There was 5 teams that were 6-2 in the conference. Okay, this is where life doesn't make sense. Because I think head-to-head, and that's what it says on the sheet. It says head-to-head is the first thing you look at. So this is how I look at it. Virginia's in. They're 7-1. Okay, so we put Virginia over here in the corner. We got to pick the other spot for the ACC championship game. So we have Duke, we have Miami, we have Georgia Tech, we have SMU, and we have Pitt. Mm-hmm. Miami beats Pitt, so Pitt's out.
Right.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Duke lost to Georgia Tech, so Duke is knocked out by Georgia Tech. SMU beat Miami, so they knocked Miami out. So now you got SMU and Georgia Tech. They didn't play each other. Common opponent. SMU lost to Wake Forest. Georgia Tech beat Wake Forest, so Georgia Tech's in. That seems like the bouncing ball that makes sense to me. You knock out you knock out you. Here's the 3 that are left. You knock out you. Okay, now there's 2 left. You didn't play each other. Here's your common opponent. You lost to that opponent. You beat that opponent. Congratulations, Georgia Tech. I have looked through the verbiage of the ACC. I have read it on the show. I have posted it. And I still can't understand why Duke is in the ACC championship. Adam, I'll start with you. Please give me your thoughts on how Georgia Tech beat Duke head-to-head. They have the same conference record, and Georgia Tech is not in, but Duke is.
Oh, where do I start, Dan? I don't make sense of this either. And I've looked at I've looked at the tiebreakers, last few weeks, and it's like the way I have no words. Like I said earlier, this has been the craziest I've ever seen the ACC, and have Duke in Charlotte.
Yeah.
To me, does not make sense, because if Duke were to win the ACC championship, you would have a five-loss team in the college football playoff, and I don't think the college football playoff would like that. So, regarding the scenarios, it's way beyond crazy. Duke did what they needed to have happen. SMU lost to Cal, lost to Miami, and it's like that's how Duke got there. It's like if Georgia Tech would have won their games, then they would be in Charlotte, but they didn't. They blew it. So to me, that's why Duke is there, because they did what they were supposed to do.
Well, I was looking at this is the thing Dan was talking about this week. Yeah, Duke clinching a spot in the championship game with a win plus a pit loss. Okay, a pit loss. Okay. SMU loss. Okay. Well, one of the tiebreakers is Pitt win, Pitt loses, Virginia loses, North Carolina wins, or Pitt loses, Virginia. It's like NC State beat North Carolina. So where's Miami? It says at plus finished higher than Miami in the Sports Source analyzed rankings. What is that? What's the Sports Source? Who's running that? Is that the thing the ACC is working with? Because that to me is like a computer telling that Duke is in the ACC championship game, and I'm sorry, it should be Miami, because Miami's higher and ranked in the college football playoff, and Duke's not even there, and you have a 5-loss team in the ACC title game, and I don't know. If you're ABC, you wish you could put this game at 12 noon instead of 8 o'clock at night.
I mean, this looks like a noon game. This looks like a game like get it on, get it off of television. I don't get it.
Nothing against the ACC.
Right.
Respectful to them.
But it doesn't make sense.
No,
it doesn't make sense because if head-to-head matters, again, Miami beat Pitt. We're talking about just the teams that are tied for second, 6-2. Miami beat Pitt. SMU beat Miami. So that means Miami's out, Pitt's out. So now I got SMU, and you have Georgia Tech, and you have Duke. Georgia Tech beat Duke. So now you take Duke out. So now you have SMU and Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech beat Wake Forest, who beat SMU. Common opponent. Georgia Tech gets in. It doesn't make sense. By the way, I don't know if you read through, because I posted this one too. The American has pages of like, if this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then what if this, and then if this doesn't. And at the end of it all, you want to know what's psychotic? If all of the tiebreakers don't choose it, they go and look at the rankings that like the AP does. So if the media likes one team over the other, that's the team that gets in.
Right.
I talked to Blake Harrell about it when East Carolina was in the running. He's like, if East Carolina's ranked higher, we get in. If we're not, we don't. I mean, it's wild. I think one of the things that I read before is like a coin flip, but this is such a wild scenario and situation. I don't understand how Duke is in this thing, because if we're talking about, and if you go to the ACC and you read the tiebreakers, the first thing they say is head-to-head. And head-to-head is the easiest thing that matters. But here we are anyways.
Right.
Okay. So we got Virginia and we got Duke.
Well, I'm looking at Miami's schedule this year. Miami's schedule, they didn't play Virginia. They normally play Virginia every year. They didn't play them this year.
Yeah, they didn't play Virginia or Duke. But here's the thing. So here's a scenario. I'm going to put up the college football playoff scenarios on the screen here inside the Great Lakes Honda City Studios. And we're going to put up the ACC. We're going to talk about the ACC championship, gentlemen. So this is what we're going to discuss. So the ACC, I'm going to clean this up a little bit on my end. So this is what we're discussing. We're discussing two different scenarios. So we have the ACC championship, and inside of the ACC championship, there's two different things that can happen. Now, if Virginia wins and if Duke wins. Now, I'm going to paint a picture for you both, and I want to get your thoughts. And Adam, I'm going to start with you on this. But if Virginia wins, they are current. Now, it depends on where teams are ranked. Duke is a 5-loss team. So Duke is not a ranked team. And what we've seen in the AP that came out this week and in the coaches poll that came out this week, we know that Virginia is still ranked. Duke is not ranked in the nation's top 25 from the AP or the coaches poll. So, if Duke were to win, this is what we call the chaos scenario. In this chaos scenario, Duke is the ACC champion. However, it's the 5 highest ranked conference champions. The Big Ten and the SEC, whoever wins their championship between Ohio State and Indiana, they're going to be one of the automatic bids out of the Big Ten. Whoever wins between Alabama and Georgia, they're going to be one of the automatic bids in the SEC. Whoever wins in the Big 12 between Texas Tech and BYU, they're going to be an automatic bid because of where they have been ranked. Then we take a look at the ACC. If it's Virginia, then the ACC is okay.
Right.
If it's Duke,
they're not okay.
Then James Madison winning the Sun Belt and Tulane or North Texas winning the American, those would be your other 2 automatic bids, and the ACC wouldn't get one, which means the Big Ten, the SEC, the Big 12, the American, and the Sun Belt would be the 5 automatic bids, and the ACC would only get 1 team in if they let in Miami. So I would love to get your thoughts. Adam, I'll start with you. I want you to argue both cases. If we see Virginia win, how many teams get in for the ACC? If we see Duke win, how many teams get in? From your point of view, paint me a picture for the college football playoff. If Duke wins or if or if Virginia wins, give me the 2 scenarios and what you think is going to happen with the college football playoff.
Sure. I'll start with Virginia. If Virginia wins the ACC championship game, I think it's got to be Miami and Virginia because they have ranked Miami basically all year long, maybe because of their name brand. Virginia would get in because they won the ACC automatically. So regarding Duke, if Duke were to win the ACC championship game, I think they would be left out because they are a 5-loss team, and I don't think the college football playoff would like to see a 5-loss team. I think the only representative would be Miami, even though they did not make the ACC championship game. Like, the only reason I could see Miami getting in is, like I said, because of their brand name, of who they've played. I know they lost SMU, but they did beat Notre Dame. They did beat Texas, and they did beat Texas. They did beat Notre Dame, and so they've had a really good record all year long. So I think if Virginia wins, you have Miami and Virginia. If Duke wins, I see the Miami Hurricanes as being the only representative from the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Okay, Chris, I ask you, and this makes total sense. I can understand this because Virginia is ranked high enough, which would mean that the Sun Belt or the American would get their champion in, but not both. Chris, I want you to paint me a picture here. We saw what Adam had to say. Do you agree or disagree? If Virginia wins the ACC championship, Virginia is an automatic bid as one of the 5 highest ranked conference champions, and Miami is going to be an at-large, which means that the ACC would get 2. If Duke wins, Duke does not get in, and Miami gets in as an at-large, the ACC champion does not get in because Duke is ranked below the Americans leaders as well as JMU, which leads the Sun Belt. If North Texas or Tulane is to win the American, or JMU does in fact win the Sun Belt, in those scenarios that Duke would win and it wouldn't matter, and Miami would be the only team in as an at-large, no automatic bid for the ACC. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, I think I agree. If Virginia wins, they should be in the college football playoff because they're the ACC champs. Because you're going to be 11 and 11-1. So that's great. If Duke wins, they shouldn't have a 5-loss team in the college football playoff because they've been trying not to have anybody more than 2 or 3 losses in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
So basically, if you have a 5 team with a team that lost 5, then maybe next year you'll have somebody who's 6-6 get in there. And to me, it's like, that's stupid. So I feel like if Duke wins, JMU is going to be in because JMU is very good. They're very, they're powerful in that Sun Belt. I seen them when I was a kid, and when I saw them in the CAA. They were very good then. Now they're keeping it still going in the Sun Belt. And with Tulane, if Tulane beats Texas, North Texas, or North Texas beats Tulane, they should be in because they are representing the American. I feel like everybody should be every conference should have somebody represent somebody.
Except for the Pac-2 right now.
Except for the
Pac-2. Thank you, Dan. Yes.
Yeah, I don't think Oregon's going to go in there. No offense to Washington. Washington is we have people who are from Washington State. They're really nice people. Yeah, that come on the show. But Pac-2, no. But I'm thinking next year they should have everybody should be represented. One team should be representing in the college football playoff to show that you can actually make it in these conferences. Because if you keep having Big Ten and the SEC take over, and maybe a ACC school here and a Sun Belt there, what's the sense of doing that? Just call it the Big Ten SEC challenge. You know, and that's to me. They do that in basketball. So this is not basketball. So
here's the thing. In the scenario, and I agree with you both. I agree that basically based on the rules of the college football playoff, and again, after all these championships are played, they get to vote again. They vote on Tuesdays at the beginning of November. They vote every week through November into the beginning of December, and then they vote, and that's all on Tuesday nights. And then they vote on Sunday, and they have their own selection Sunday, if you will. So in early December. So they will have another chance. After all these championships happen, they will have another chance to take a look at this, and they'll have a chance to rank their conference champions. So as of what we anticipate, if Miami's the highest ranked ACC school, but they're not playing in the ACC championship, they actually benefit from not being in this because they can't have 3 losses now, and they can't be punished. So it almost looks like Virginia. Now it depends on what the committee does. If JMU wins the Sun Belt, and after we see that, we see Tulane or North Texas either or wins the American. If we look at those and they say, you know what, we don't really think Virginia's that great, and they could still move them below if Virginia were to win. Best case scenario for the ACC, Virginia wins because they already want to put, because it seemed last year the committee did everything in their power to try and get Miami in. They didn't, for like 3 or 4 weeks, they would not put SMU below Miami, and Miami was they were seated 2 below them in the standings of the ACC, but they would not move them nationally. Then they had no choice. Mm-hmm. In the case of Miami right now, if they consider Virginia's schedule to be weak, which I can understand, and they're 10-2, okay, going 11-2, you got 11-2 and you got 10-2, but Miami sits here and says, we beat Pitt, we beat Notre Dame, we handled common opponents with Notre Dame. We beat Pitt by 31. They beat Pitt by 22, I think it was, or somewhere around there. So when push comes to shove, Miami's got a case. Do you both think that no matter what happens, whether Virginia wins or Duke wins, is Miami in no matter what? when we come down to at-large teams and we have 7 spots, and here we go. I'm going to paint a little picture with you guys, and I'm going to get your thoughts on it. Let's paint the picture. So here's the SEC. Now, the SEC, let's say for argument's sake that Alabama wins the SEC championship. So they're your automatic qualifier. So I'm going to give them a little check mark next to their name. Then we have Georgia. If Georgia loses to Alabama, Georgia will have 2 losses this season, but they'll both be to one team. So yes, they lost twice, but they only lost to one team. So I think Georgia's in. So then after having Georgia, you got Ole Miss. They only have 1 loss. Texas A&M, they only have 1 loss. And so then the question becomes, you have 3 other teams in the SEC. Texas, Oklahoma, and Vanderbilt. Texas has a win over Vanderbilt. Alabama has a win over Vanderbilt. Texas has a win over Oklahoma. But Texas has a win over Texas A&M. So here's the question I have for you guys. In the SEC, if Bama wins the SEC or Georgia wins, I think either way, we're putting them both in. But there is somewhat of a chaos scenario. If Bama loses the SEC championship, they have 3 losses. Texas has 3 losses. Oklahoma beat Alabama. Texas beat Oklahoma. So in that case, do you put in Texas over Alabama? Do you put them both in? So I'm going to ask you, in both scenarios, Alabama beats Georgia or Georgia beats Alabama, how many SEC schools do you put in of the 7 that I gave you? I'll start with you, Chris.
7. Well, I think if Georgia and Alabama, they should be in. And then let me bring up the schedule, the standings again. Hold on a second here. I think they, like I said earlier, I think you should have, every conference should be somebody in there. I think everybody should have something. Because I think people forget there's other conferences except for the Pac-2. Let's go to the SEC. Let me pull this up here. I'm on my little thing here. Okay, the SEC has. My computer's trying to load. Okay, so if Alabama and Georgia are playing each other on Saturday, I don't think Ole Miss should be in there because Ole Miss should not be in the playoff. Yes, Kiffin just left to go to LSU. That should be just like the Jordan Travis situation because your coach is gone. You have an interim coach. Do you keep him in there? Maybe, maybe not. I don't think so. To me, don't think so because you don't have your coach because everybody else is letting their coaches stay. Like in Tulane is going to let their coaches stay to get to go to the playoff, and then after that he's going to head off to Florida. So that's great, But I think LSU needed one, because we got recruiting on Wednesday with the National Signing Day. They all want people there ASAP. To me, I think they need to push this National Signing Day back like 2 weeks next year after the conference championship game. Not the first week in December. To me, that's ridiculous. And then you got everybody else in there. You got Tennessee, Missouri, So I feel like the college football playoff should be Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss if you want to give them an opportunity because they have a new coach right now, and Texas A&M. I think those are the 4 in there. That's just my opinion. Right. I think Texas shouldn't be in there because yes they lost to Ohio State, but that's back in the first week of the season when everybody was, it was Labor Day weekend, so that's different than if they played Ohio State last weekend, it probably would have been a different story. And then with Oklahoma, being 10-2, they should be one of the at-large teams to play in the tournament because I think they did a great job. But you forget about Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt should be there. It's really hard, Dan. It's going to be the point like somebody's going to be very upset on Sunday. Some fan base is going to be really ticked off that they shouldn't, they should be in the college football playoff, like what happened to Florida State, like we had to go through in 2023. And there's going to be a lot of people going, we want to sue these people. You can't do anything. It's just the way it is, we won't know. I want to talk to Gary Stokan because Gary Stokan told me about it last year that he went there to watch how they do it. and he said it's like a science.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So I'd like to sit down and talk to him more about that if we see him. So anyway, I'm done.
So Adam, I send it to you now. Okay, here's the scenario. So for argument's sake, we have Alabama wins the SEC. We have Virginia wins the ACC. We have Ohio State wins the Big Ten. And we have Texas Tech wins the Big 12. So I would imagine Texas Tech, I don't see the Big 12 getting more than one team. So you could tell me if you disagree, but if they beat BYU a second time, we see BYU go out. BYU doesn't have what Georgia has, which is you lost to the same team, but do you have the wins to back it up? I don't think BYU does. Ohio State beats Indiana. Indiana only has one loss. In that scenario, Indiana's in, Ohio State's in. You would imagine by the rankings and having one loss despite having a weaker schedule, Oregon's in. Bama, Georgia, and you look at Texas A&M, if they're all in. And so then you have, so that gives you 3 in the SEC at this point. It gives you 1 in the ACC. It gives you 3 in the Big 12, and it gives you 1 in the Big 10. So my numbers right now have me at 8. So now if Virginia wins the ACC, that means it's between the American and the Sun Belt because they're not going to let them both in. That would only happen in Duke's chaos scenario. So let's say in the American, Tulane defeats North Texas. So now Tulane gets in. That gives us 9, which means I have 3 spots left.
Mm-hmm.
So Duke's out of it in this scenario. So my question to you is, who do I put in if my 5 automatics are Alabama, Virginia, Ohio State, Texas Tech, and Tulane in no specific order? My 7, Georgia, Texas A&M, Indiana, Oregon, I have 3 more spots between Ole Miss, Texas, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, and Miami. Give me 3.
Okay. I think you would have to put Miami in there.
Oh, and you could also say Notre Dame. You could say Notre Dame because they're hanging off in this place too.
All right. Well, I would have to say Miami.
Okay.
They have played a really good schedule all year long. Yes, they did lose to SMU on the road when they, it was the first time that they left the state of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
You look at their non-conference wins. They did beat a South Florida team when South Florida was ranked. They beat Notre Dame when Notre Dame was ranked. So I believe I would have to put Miami in there.
Okay.
I believe you would have to put Notre Dame in there. Yes, I know they do not play in a conference. They are in an independent school. But you look at their schedule, yeah, they did. They played Boise State, who is in the Mountain West Conference Championship game versus UNLV. They have had a good schedule all year long. I could see I would put Notre Dame. That leaves 1. This may sound crazy, but I believe I would put Texas in because Texas could, whoever they would have to face, I think they would give them a good game. I know Arch Manning is a starting quarterback this year. Yes, they lost to Ohio State in week 1.
Yeah.
Yes, they beat their rival Texas A&M. I know they lost to Florida. So, the way Texas has been playing, the way Coach Steve Sarkisian has been going, I would put Texas in because It would be a really good matchup. I think the ratings would be really good, and it's a team that a lot of people probably would like to see in the college football playoff.
I like the notes. I like the thoughts. I'll back it up. Texas beat Oklahoma. Texas beat Vanderbilt. So they knocked those two out in Adam's scenario, and Texas gets the nod over Ole Miss. So here's my question to you, gentlemen. And Adam, I'll stay with you since you're the one that brought it up, and then I'll get Chris's thoughts. If Texas gets in over Ole Miss, Texas has 3 losses. However, Texas has wins over Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, and Texas A&M.
Yes.
Ole Miss did not play that tough of a schedule this year. So the question becomes, if it's between Texas and Ole Miss, does it matter the 3 losses for Texas, or does Texas get promoted for having the key wins that Ole Miss doesn't have? And does Ole Miss get punished like Florida State got punished by them saying, Jordan Travis isn't your quarterback, so we're not going to waste a spot? Do they look at Ole Miss and say 9 times out of 10 when a head coach leaves, no matter how good a team is, they don't win in the postseason? So do they knock Ole Miss out as a lame duck because Lane is gone? And do they make that the excuse for Texas?
That's a good question, Dan. And, I'll agree with you. You look at what Lane Kiffin did to Ole Miss, and I could easily see the college football playoff committee punish Ole Miss like they did Florida State. You mentioned the key wins that Texas has. Texas beat Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, Texas A&M. I could easily see Texas in whoever they would play would give them a good game. Last year, yes, they did play Clemson at home. Texas won. So the way Texas has been playing this year, I could see Texas in over Ole Miss because of their schedule, because of who they are, their name brand, and I think if I'm the college football committee, I look at what Ole Miss did, and I would punish them just like they did Florida State back in 2023.
So, Chris, I send you the question. Texas A&M has lost to Texas. Oklahoma has lost to Texas. Vanderbilt has lost to Texas. If Vanderbilt's out because they lost to Texas and they lost to Alabama, and they don't really have a lot to write home about despite having a great 10-2 year, if Texas beats the team that beat Alabama and Alabama's the SEC champion, does it matter that Texas lost by a lot to Georgia? Or is that the perfect scenario that Texas beats Oklahoma, Oklahoma beat Alabama, Alabama beats Georgia? So does that almost kind of say, hey, listen, yeah, Texas got blown out by Georgia, but they beat the team that beat the SEC champion. If it's down to Texas and Ole Miss, even though Ole Miss has 1 loss and Texas has 3, who do you take between Ole Miss and Texas?
Well, I think you probably will take Texas because, you don't know what the situation of Ole Miss right now. Because Kiffin's gone. How the players going to respond to it? Now their season's over. They have to get ready for a bowl game or a college football playoff first round. And you don't have your coach, your leader. You have some guy taking over. And this guy who's taking over for Ole Miss needs to do a fantastic job keeping these troops from bailing. This sounds like a Mike Norvell situation. When 2023 we didn't get into the college football playoff, and he had to get players to go play for a bowl game against Georgia, and we got shellacked, ran out of the state of Florida, out of Miami, really bad. This could be bad for Ole Miss, because now you got players like, oh, my coach left. Why am I going to be playing? You know, they're going to have. He needs this new guy who just took in for the interim coach needs to rally the troops and say, look, let's do it for pride. You know, and I feel like for the committee, that's going to be a really tough situation because you know you're going to have an interim coach, and I feel like you should go with Texas because Texas played, you know, Georgia and you know lost to Georgia. They played Vanderbilt, lost to Vanderbilt, and they played and they beat Oklahoma. So I think Texas should get in.
Well, you know, and I've been saying it, and Steve Sarkisian said it at the end of the game where they beat Texas A&M. He said, "Listen, if it doesn't, it would be a great disservice to college football to not put in the Longhorns because if it comes down to who you play, then why should we schedule Ohio State? Why schedule a rematch from the college football playoff semifinal? Why schedule a game against a team that just won a national championship? Why not just schedule another cupcake? Then we're 10-2 and nobody's saying anything." So that's the question that really comes up in the grand scheme of things here. And it's going to be a question that'll be mulled over if Texas is not allowed in. So that is a question to think about. Here is my final question for you, gentlemen.
Mm-hmm.
If Virginia wins and it comes down to the committee trying to figure out what they want to do, does Miami get in no matter what is really the question. Like, is this Miami Notre Dame conversation that I've had now for many days, and I've talked to logical people and I've talked to people that think there's bunnies chasing them on the ceiling. So the question that it comes down to here right now, and Chris, I'll start with you. Miami, Notre Dame. Miami lost to SMU, and they lost to Louisville. Notre Dame lost to Texas A&M, and they lost to Miami. They both have the exact same record. Notre Dame will not play in a conference championship because they're not in a conference. Miami won't play in a conference championship because, again, Duke must have Aladdin, and one of the three wishes he made was to be in the ACC championship for Duke. So here we are. It seems simple to me, right? 10-2, not playing in a conference championship, not playing in a conference championship. This team beat this team, but the question keeps coming up, does head-to-head even matter? And they keep talking about Notre Dame's eye test. Now, my whole thing about the eye test is this is not an ocular exam. This is college football. And it's also the fact that, you know, everyone passes the eye test when you're drunk in a bar at 2 o'clock in the morning and the lights are off. So my question to you, Chris, is Miami played Notre Dame. Most of the time, the committee's got to sit at the table and say, who do we think we would win if these two played each other? They have the exact same record. Neither one of them can be a conference champion. Miami beat them head to head. So my two questions for you. Is Miami in no matter what as an at-large team? My second question for you is, do you think Notre Dame also deserves to be in? But who... So do you believe Miami should be in over Notre Dame? And do you think they're both going to be in? So it's a two-part question. Who's the better team, which seems like it's already been proven, but who's the better team between the two? And then secondly, do they both get in as at-large?
Well, I can't go against family because my brother's a Miami Hurricane fan. If he's watching, he might.
Well, you can't go against logic, my friend.
Yeah, I can't go by But here's what they should do: the College Football Playoff Committee should do is let's have a rematch between Miami and Florida and Miami and Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Yeah, this time in South Bend because it'll be a little bit warmer down in Miami, and it'll be a little bit colder in South Bend, and then you get this thing taken care of because they played each other beginning of the year. And Miami had a chance to knock them out, and they kept Notre Dame in that game until that last-minute field goal.
Yeah.
You know, because I talked to my brother about that. I'm like, dude, you should have been putting these people away. You know, you should. You know, and you kept them around. And I think now, because Notre Dame, looking at Notre Dame's schedule, you know, they played Texas A&M, they lost, and they were actually ranked in the top 25 being an 0-2 team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they went on they won 10 in a row, but they played NC State, NC State's okay. Dave Duran's all right, but at the time they won 36-7. USC was a little tough for them, but USC, was still ranked. Boston College they only beat Boston College 25-10. They should have drilled them in the ground. They shouldn't let them stay around. They did that to Navy. They did that to Pitt, and then sorry, Dan. That's all I'm saying. Sorry. That was I had passes for that game for Syracuse out there in South Bend, and I knew that was going to be bad.
Yeah,
I didn't get.
Just for the record, I had Syracuse losing by 40, and before I focused in on the score, my brain said Notre Dame 70. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. So I already had it. So when people are like, "Oh my gosh," I was like, "What?" And now people are fighting. Well, Notre Dame beat Syracuse by more than Miami. I was like, they both blew them out. Like, what the hell does that matter? It's not a ranked team. The only time you talk about common opponents is you go head to head first. Listen, ACC, you go head to head first, then you go common opponents. Head to head, Miami beat you, Notre Dame. Common opponents, they beat the best opponent you beat by more.
Right.
There's no conversation to be had. It's the easiest conversation in the world. Okay, so next up we have Notre Dame. Yes. Okay, 10-2. Yes, sir. And thank you, the sheet. Miami, 10-2. Okay, Miami beat Notre Dame. Miami. Next question. It shouldn't be Miami or Notre Dame. It should be Notre Dame or Texas, Notre Dame or Ole Miss, Notre Dame or, whoever else is on this list, Notre Dame or Oklahoma. But to be completely realistic about this, to punish the SEC for playing a bastard of a schedule, and then to rank Notre Dame at who in their right mind ranks in a 0% winning percentage team? Notre Dame ranked at 0-2. Who ranks that? But again, the AP and the coaches show their colors, right? Notre Dame sells tickets. But this is what I would say to you all. The Dallas Cowboys sell tickets. And the Dallas Cowboys don't make the playoffs just because they're the Dallas Cowboys. The New York Yankees sell tickets, and the New York Yankees don't get put into the World Series because they sell tickets. The Dodgers have Shohei Ohtani, but they have to win games, and they got beat by the Diamondbacks a couple years ago. There's no other sport in the country that says, "Oh, you look pretty." So, that's not how we let teams in here. Okay?
Right.
The facade of Notre Dame, but what have they done and what haven't they done? And I know people think I hate Notre Dame. I don't. Riley Leonard is a friend. I like talking to Marcus Freeman. I respect the heck out of Notre Dame. I love that they promote God. I love that they're a Catholic university. I love that they don't hide from that. I love what they stand for. But we're talking about football. And when we talk about football, Miami beat Notre Dame. They have the same record. That's not a conversation. Miami's in, yay woo. And then here's Notre Dame. So I look at Notre Dame and I say Notre Dame or Oklahoma. Oklahoma beat Alabama. So Oklahoma's in. So then I look at Texas A&M that played a weak schedule. And I look at Ole Miss that played a weak schedule. And I say, well, Texas A&M beat Notre Dame and Texas beat Texas A&M. So if you beat the team that beat the team, then Texas should be in. So now the conversation is between Notre Dame and Texas A&M. And Texas A&M beat you head to head. So now, and they have a better record. They're 11-1. So now Texas A&M's in. So now the conversation is really Notre Dame versus Ole Miss. That's the only conversation. So do you punish Lane Kiffin or do you punish a Lane Kiffin-less Ole Miss or don't you? The real conversation is Notre Dame versus Ole Miss. That's the conversation.
Right.
So, Adam, who do you pick?
I picked Notre Dame. And I can say, yes, they did lose to Texas A&M. Yes, they lost to Miami. But, Notre Dame has played the schedule that they were set out to play.
Yeah.
And, all you can do is play who's on your schedule.
Right.
I know, like Chris mentioned, they should have beaten Boston College by a lot more, and they didn't. Notre Dame is a brand that a lot of people know.
Mm-hmm.
And I would put Notre Dame in. Yes, yes, they did beat Indiana last year in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
And so, but I would put Notre Dame in because of the teams that they played.
And over Ole Miss.
You know,
You're arguing them over Ole Miss.
Yes,
Which
I would put Notre Dame in over Ole Miss.
Which is an okay conversation to have. That's an okay
That's
conversation to have, because Ole Miss didn't play a tough SEC schedule. And if Notre Dame beat Texas A&M or Miami, there's no question that they're in if they're 11-1 at this point or 12-0. But here's the thing, okay? You can't let in Notre Dame and not Texas A&M, and you can't let in Notre Dame and not Miami. So Texas A&M and Miami have to get in as an at-large team for you to even consider Notre Dame, because then you have the conversation about Notre Dame. But I still think you put in Oklahoma over Notre Dame. And I still think when you look at Texas, and people could say whatever they want to say, Notre Dame's 2 best wins they did not get. Texas got 3 of the 4. Because when you look at the heap, they didn't beat Georgia. But see, the thing is, but they lost to Florida, Dan. But they lost to Florida. But what did Notre Dame fans say? Beginning of the season doesn't matter, Dan. You can't look at the first 2 games. You got to look at the last 10. Now, would they be saying that if they lost in the middle of the season? Now, they lost to Florida by Texas. That was earlier on. So why can't Texas throw that out? Has Texas not become a Texas took one of 3 undefeated teams in the country and beat them at the end of the season. So that's something that you have to look at. But I ask you this as a final note, my gents. No matter what happens, no matter who wins their championship games, do you believe that Miami is in as an at-large team no matter what?
I'll start, Dan, and I'm going to say yes. They are in. They beat Notre Dame. Like I said, they played everyone that they had to play on their schedule. Yes, they lost to SMU on the road. First time that they left the state of Florida. Yes, they did lose to Louisville on that Friday night at Hard Rock Stadium, but they played the schedule that they were set out in front of them, and so they have a really great coach in Mario Cristobal, a sensational quarterback in Carson Beck, the wide receiver Malachi Tony, who really wasn't supposed to be there this year because he reclassified so he could be at Miami this year. And they've played everyone that they could. Mm-hmm. So, yes, I would put Miami in the college football playoff.
Chris, your thoughts? I take what I agree with you, Adam, on your sentiments. Chris, your thoughts?
I think Miami should be in because, yes, they had hiccups against SMU and Louisville, but they should be in because they're higher than Georgia Tech in the college football playoff. And if Duke wins the championship on Saturday, I think Miami should be the representing the conference because it'll be a good way to represent the conference. Because yes, they did have a rental in Carson Beck. I don't know if he's gone this year, so we'll see who will be the quarterback next year in Coral Gables. But let Miami see. We'll see if Miami can run the table for my brother's sake, so get the chance he can see his team try to win another title. He deserves one. After it's been a long time for them since 2001 when they had the NFL squad down in Miami. So they need to win something.
Yeah, crazy situation. If Miami was playing for an ACC championship, they may, if they were to win, they may be one of the top 4 seeds in this thing. So very interesting how this is all shaken out. But of course, I think Miami's hoping Duke wins because then it'll give the committee, well, we got to put in one ACC school. They look at the rankings. They look at how high Miami is. They look at the fact that Miami beat Notre Dame. And, there you go. And then you look at common opponent of Pitt, who is Notre Dame's best win of the season. Notre Dame has 2 good wins this season, Pitt and USC. Those are both quad 2 wins. They're quad 2 wins.
Mhm.
Miami's is a quad 1 over Notre Dame, if you consider Notre Dame to be quad 1. So the reality of it all is Miami, if Virginia wins, I think the committee still wants Miami. I think if Duke wins, the committee wants Miami. I don't think Miami can lose in this situation, and it better not come down to Miami and Notre Dame. But if it does, I guess it does benefit Miami that the U is very well known as well. So we shall see. But it shouldn't be on how many people know you. It should be if you did the work. And I don't know how, again, in any other sport, when you're playing in the NCAA tournament, if Syracuse beats Georgetown head-to-head, does Georgetown get to reappear in the NCAA tournament somewhere else? No. So let's call it what it is. You can't have a rematch unless you both make it. So I think Miami's going into this thing no matter what. You've heard from the gentleman at HerbFM Sports Radio. And Chris, share with everybody how they can watch and listen to you gentlemen weekly.
Well, we do our shows now on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock, and you can watch us on YouTube, on Facebook, and Twitter. HerbFM Sports Radio on YouTube, HerbFM Sports Radio on Facebook, and then on Twitter is just at HerbFM, and you can watch both, same time when we do it, same time.
Well, I appreciate you both, Chris Heidel and Adam Lemerise of HerbFM Sports Radio, talking about college football coach hirings, the American, as well as the ACC, the confusion that still doesn't make sense of the championship game, as well as who makes it no matter who wins between Virginia and Duke. Is it Miami no matter what? And that Notre Dame school, how do they get in? So, gentlemen, I appreciate you both for being here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside the Great Lakes Honda City Studios, and God bless as always.
Thank you, Dan. And God bless to you too.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you both.
Happy holidays, Dan.
Happy holidays. And I want to thank you all for watching and listening to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on youtube.com and facebook.com, both /WakeUpCallDT. Of course, in our typical streaming, we have our internet radio, wakeupcalldt.podbean.com. Of course, you can go to Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts, Player FM, Podbean, Podchaser.com, Podvine, Spotify, TuneIn, and YouTube to search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, or one word, Wake Up Call DT. Subscribe, download. It is all free. Make sure you follow us on all of these channels. And many thanks to our incredible team that just makes this road so much more fun. And I just can't thank the family that we have here enough. Central and Upstate New York partners, Great Lakes, Honda City, Carvel, DeWitt, the Wildcat Sports Pub, GG Cards and Brakes, Myers Creek, with both locations on the countryside in Cazenovia and in the Syracuse Inner Harbor. Chick-fil-A Cicero, Ma&Pa's, the snack capital of the world. Mother's Cupboard, the home of my breakfast sandwich exclusively, the Cuse Mac Mother, bacon, egg, and cheese inside of 2 pieces of French toast. Cut it up and have it with syrup. Pick it up and eat it like a sandwich. Game Point Sports Complex, the only place to have year-round basketball, volleyball, pickleball, and more, including floor hockey and cheerleading. Pizza Man, Chick-fil-A DeWitt, Canine Campground Dog Boarding, Brian's Landing, Canine Camp Dog Daycare, Avicoli's, and we are the exclusive multimedia marketing partner of your Onondaga Community College Lasers, Bryan and Stratton College Bobcats of Syracuse, and the Binghamton University Bearcats. You'll find OCC every other Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time bi-monthly with student athletes, coaches, and administration. You'll find the Bobcats every month in the Bobcat Buzz, and you'll find the Binghamton Bearcats every Tuesday during Bearcat Time weekly at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. To find all of our shows, all of our content with each of these schools, go to youtube.com/wakeupcalldt. Click subscribe, hit the notification bell, find our OCC playlist, our BSC Syracuse playlist, and our Binghamton playlist. Each of these wonderful schools are on wakeupcalldt.com's homepage and underneath the exclusive partners tab. For more information on the Lasers, go to onondagalazers.com. On the Bobcats, go to syracuse.bscbobcats.com. And on the Bearcats, go to binghamtonbearcats.com. For now, from the Great Lakes Honda City Studios, I say God bless, no stress. Do your best. We'll talk soon.